Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. Well, hello. Welcome everybody to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. My show is all about entrepreneurs that are growing, making it happen, and excited to have Paul Thompson on the show today, and from Paul David Thompson Coaching and Consulting. Paul went from, working and just having a job to throwing in the towel and founding his company and becoming an awesome entrepreneur. And excited to talk about that journey with you today, Paul, and also to hear some of the really cool stuff that you've got going on. Paul is a full-time real estate investor, coach, hard money lender, husband, and father. And he teaches people how to acquire deals, build businesses, and raise money. In addition to managing his rental portfolio and doing deals consulting, he also is a host and has his own podcast called My Freedom Foundry Podcast. Well, welcome to the show, Paul.
Joe, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking shop.
Yeah, man. So talk to me about how you got started. Let's kind of go back to that. My show is all, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners watch my show, and we all love to hear each other's stories. So why don't you tell us your story? Yeah.
So I grew up in a lower income family. I never went hungry or anything, but we just kind of lived in an environment of lack. And so for me to go to college and to get a college degree that had a marketable skill set, and in the year 2000, when I came out of school, I think making something like $45,000 a year, I made it. Like I was like, that completely changed my social economic status.
Yeah.
Which, you think about it, it's 20 years ago, so $45,000 was a little bit more back then, but that still was not a life-changing amount of money for most people. But for me, it was a certain degree of accomplishment that my parents never achieved. I think they never made that much money in any given year in their entire life, including up to the day. So I jumped a couple of rungs in the socioeconomic status, and afterwards I went to work and was earning an income, but then I felt very unrewarded by the whole situation. But I didn't really know any alternative. I didn't have an entrepreneurial spirit at heart at the time, because I was just trying to survive. And this was finally in an environment where I had an opportunity to breathe a little bit. And so I just settled into work, and I thought that's what life was going to be. And about 15 years into that program, or that lifestyle, I just kept feeling like I wasn't living up to my potential. And I'd always kind of hoped and dreamed and wished along the way that I could do my own thing, but I'd never really had any meaningful ideas, or I just didn't know how to go about it. And because there's no entrepreneurial track that you can follow that I knew of. I was just like, you go to work, and then that's what you do. And I had a big kind of wake up call moment when I was on a family vacation, and I asked to extend my vacation with my boss, work from the beach, but I just wouldn't come back to the office and sit there this was in 2015. And by the way, I worked for an internet service provider. Like, we made the technology that made the internet possible. So you'd think we'd be on the cutting edge of allowing people to work remotely. But in 2015, that was not as common of a behavior. This before the pandemic. And that wasn't even a consideration. It was like, no, get your butt back to work. Like, we don't do that here. And I was like, what do you mean we don't do that here? Like we make that possible. It was like, no, I mean, we're not even discussing this. Like, you'll either be back here on Monday or you don't have a job. And I had worked there for years. I was like a middle manager. It's not like I was some upstart first year employee. I mean, I was like a director that managed lots of employees and had like a big budget that I managed. Like I was a significant contributor to the company, but they didn't give a damn. They just did not care. And that was my moment that I was like, okay,
Wow.
I see how it is. Like my eyes saw the world in a little different way, that they didn't really care about me. And I was not a meaningful contributor, really, because I could be replaced. And that job was way more important to me than I was to them. So I went about trying to figure out another way to earn an income, and I landed on real estate after evaluating a few different options.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did you get into real estate? Was it like on the agent side, or did you buy a first property, or?
Good question. Actually, before 2008, my wife and I both got our license, thinking that that was a way that we could learn about real estate. And this is part of 2006. And turns out we're terrible. We don't have the personalities to be an agent. We're not salespeople at all, and it didn't stick. It didn't stick. And so and then we started having our kids, and then you know life happened, right? 2008 happened, and it was just, I was happy to have a job. And it wasn't in 2015 that I said, I had this kind of wake up call moment. And I was like, okay, well, what is something I could do? And I considered being a real estate agent again. I considered being an insurance agent. I considered buying um, some sort of franchise, and only to find that I think if I did those things, I would just be buying myself another job. I wanted to create a situation where I could control my time again. So I found, like, well, how about this? How about I just ease my way into it? I'll buy a rental property and just see if this works. And once I bought my first rental property and got my first rental check in, I thought, wow, like this is it. So I did the BRRRR method, the buy, refi method, and basically
Yeah.
put my money in, refi, and got all my money back out. And then I started doing that. I did like 10, 12 times in a row. And I was like, this works, this scales. So I went on a tear, and I just bought, I can't remember exactly now, but in the first 18 months, I bought 18 single family houses. And I've gone on to buy, I can't remember. I can't even keep track of how many pieces of property that I bought and sold. And I have a portfolio of rental properties that comfortably provides for my very low cost of living in Little Rock, Arkansas.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Well, it's cool to see you take the leap and take the action. I'm sure it was, scary at the time. What was the most, what was one of the biggest fears that you think held you back? Was it fear of failure, or?
Yeah. So the biggest fear that I had before I started my journey in real estate was not knowing the path. I think I had this problem and this challenge of following a proven path, like you do in school, like you do in work. And when you're an entrepreneur, there isn't always a proven path to follow. You have to kind of figure it out along the way. And a lot of people, I don't think, take the first step because they want to see the entire path perfectly laid out in front of them with no risks. And that's just not the way it works to be an entrepreneur. You have to go at the speed of instruction, and you have to, once you go through the next traffic light, you can see a little bit better. And then you go to the next intersection and you see a little bit better. And sometimes you take the wrong turn, and you loop around for a while, and you have to get back on the right road, and then you find your way. And that's the way what it takes to be a business owner. And I had to basically get somebody to slap me across the head and say, you're taking more risks right now by doing nothing than trying to plow forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think doing nothing is a risk, right? And I think
it's the biggest risk that we take that we don't realize. Right.
Yeah, it's really wild actually when you really think about it. You got to take action, and it's all hard work. Like
it is.
Building a business is hard work. Climbing a corporate ladder is a hard work. There's no right or wrong with that. I think it really comes down to the person, the individual. But no matter what it is that you're going to do, it's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, when you're thinking about going out into the market, into the real world, and earning an income or starting a business, you're going to be climbing some sort of mountain, whether that's the corporate ladder or the entrepreneurial path. Whatever path you're taking, you're going to have to go through some obstacles. You're going to go through some sort of challenges. You're going to have to become a better person along the way that's capable of making that climb. And at the end of that climb, you want to have something to show for it. And the problem with climbing the corporate ladder is, in most cases, you have nothing to show for it except for expenditure of time, because your income is gone. You're like nothing, very little is being provided for you in equity, and you have no real ownership of the outcome. Unlike when you own real estate or start a business, if you're building equity in these assets, then when you stop doing something, when you stop exchanging your time for money, these assets are still there appreciating or paying you cash flow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, too, to your point, like, and because, listen, owning a business or being an entrepreneur, it isn't for everyone. I think, you go online today, watch a lot of stuff and they make it seem so easy.
Right.
But if you are, in the corporate side working for a company, it's all about bringing more value to the world, right? So whether it's in a company you work for or as an entrepreneur, but to your point, I do agree that you've got to, if you're on the corporate side, or even you own your own business, not because not everyone's business is around real estate, right? Some people have a business. So and certain businesses, especially service ones, you're not really necessarily building a ton of value.
Right.
So, I think it's really important that you're taking the money that you're earning from whatever it is at a job or in your business and putting it into things that appreciate, whether it's other businesses, real estate, or and other businesses could be in the public stock market.
Sure.
But you've got to be always divesting whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your main source of income is. You have to divest in other things that produce more money.
You have to buy equity somehow, right?
100%.
Fundamentally, you need to buy something that is going to appreciate or create cash flow without your direct involvement.
Exactly right. Because there's always going to be a wiggle in the economy. There's always going to be things that, become challenging in any sales career that you have. There's always changes that disrupt that. So having the other sources of income is super important.
Well, you're using up your most precious and non-renewable resource in time. And in exchange for that time, you want to exchange it into something else that exists beyond your effort. And if you never make that transition, you'll forever be having to exchange your time for money, and you'll never retire.
Yep. 100%. Yep. I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about your business today. Like, tell me what you've got going on. Excited to talk about that.
Sure. So I have a couple different disciplines. I'm passive in some things and I'm active in others. And so I have an existing rental portfolio of, I guess I'm the only owner of them. So I guess I actively own it, but I have a property manager in place. And it's taken a while to kind of work through and find the right property manager, but I have a good enough property manager right now, and they take care of problems. And I probably spend 3 to 5 hours a month thinking or answering questions or dealing with the books or filing taxes or whatever for this portfolio of 40 or so properties that's in the central Arkansas area where I live, and that's the foundation of my income. So that's what I actively live off of, but I spend very little time making that happen. So I think of that as that passive or residual income stream exceeds my living expenses. So now I have bought myself financial freedom in that I don't have to spend very much time at all to make that income cover my living expenses.
That's exciting.
It is exciting because, and it's not a lot of money. I mean, we don't live a lavish lifestyle. We have a very low cost of living, but it allows me to cover my basic expenses. And now I don't have to spend all day figuring out how to make the next dollar and exchanging, I would say wasting, but certainly spending my time in order to earn income. And so now what I do is I spend my time actively on big projects that have a wealth building potential and less actual cash flow potential. So what I do is I invest in commercial real estate projects. I have some ground up multifamily projects that I'm working on, which are big projects that won't pay out for many years to come because we have to build these things. And that's a huge learning curve on understanding all that. And then I also run a fund where we help other commercial real estate projects build their capital stack. So we'll come in as a lender on some of their projects. And so I get to see and review a lot of real estate deals. And that's kind of now become my expenditure of time is raising capital and looking at projects to see if it meets our criteria.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I guess the cool thing about the fund is people can invest into your fund, right? And earn some high yield.
Right.
But, it's a way for them to get involved in real estate, make some, yield on the debt side, but not have to do, the work. right? So
Well, it's a lot of the benefits of real estate without the exposure to the complexities of real estate. So we take on the risk of running the complexities of real estate, and then the passive investor gets a yield. And we offer a 12% pref. It's a publicly available investment, but it's for accredited investors, so I can openly talk about it. And it's a really good way for people to divest some of their available capital and get some exposure to basically inside deals that you wouldn't really have access to otherwise.
yeah, very cool. And do you ever do any deals where you can also, like, do you ever do deals where you take on equity and syndicate that stuff out?
Absolutely. So a lot of times people will come to me and say, hey, I've got this project and I need some help. Can you help raise capital? Can you be an active participant in the project itself? And in that case, we will raise capital, and I'll have a seat at the table as a GP, and I'll act as an investor relations or an asset manager, so that I have material um, involvement in the project. I'm not just a capital raiser, but I also bring the investors from my database to bear, and they get access to a deal. And I'm really careful and considerate about those, because there's a lot of people doing that business, and I could just find a deal anywhere. But I like to find established operators that have many years of experience, have multiple exits, and have a very strong proven track record, because I'm putting a lot of my money into these deals myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when investors come along with me, I want to have our interest aligned.
100%. Yeah. Definitely got to watch that today. There's so many people, doing that. The deals are out there, but it's, and also going through, someone that's been doing it for a long time, that's also gone through some cycles is helpful
Right.
too, and that are prepared for that. So definitely that's super, super important. So yeah, I guess, what do you think, what do you think's been the biggest challenge with, going, into becoming, an entrepreneur, because, everyone likes to talk about all the fun, good stuff, but, I like on this show, it's like, what are the things that you had to challenge and, overcome that led to, growth in your
Yeah.
entrepreneurial
What's
journey?
the stream kind of real talk about what it
Yeah.
takes to
Yeah.
be an entrepreneur? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur, or even a business owner, a small time business owner, is often romanticized, and the challenges are not talked
Yeah.
about nearly as much as they should be. And some of those challenges are learning how to operate a business, like the nitty gritty details of how to hire employees, how to manage payroll, how to file your taxes correctly, how to have a marketing channel that is consistently generating leads, having a sales cycle, that our sales team that is actually getting transactions completed, and then a fulfillment team. And at first this may be all you, but these are like the divisions that you have in every business, and then you need to be able to fulfill on your product or service. And many people make the mistake of just trying to find the next uh, uh, client by doing more marketing, and not fulfilling on the client that they just served. And
Yeah.
that client is your best source of new of new future income. Like, if someone really likes your product or service, they're going to refer their friends to you, and that's the cheapest source of new clients that you're ever going to find. And when you get really good at fulfilling, then you don't have to market and be this like cutthroat sales team as much, because your product speaks for itself.
Yeah, and that's so important. I think there's so much value in building, providing value to your customers, and there's so much value, in your customers. But yeah, to your point, and you're right. No one ever talks about this. Being an entrepreneur, business owner, owning a business is so romanticized, but it is, probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do if you do it. If you've built the business, if you started from nothing, you really know this. And I feel like you're kind of like a certified juggler, when you
Yeah.
own a business, because you're constantly, all those things you said, like, where, every business at every level, at all sizes, a few 100,000 in revenue to millions, to tens of millions in revenue, it's all the same challenges, and it's usually people, processes, systems, accounting, marketing and sales, and the thing is, and kind of what you said is like, it's, you could do great on marketing, but if you're not booking the sales, or you can do great on marketing, booking the sales, but not bringing those customers, back because you're dropping the ball somewhere.
Yep.
You can do great at all those things and then mess up the accounting side. And you can do great in the sales and marketing, but not a good job with, hiring people and having a good culture. So, balancing those out, you really are this, like, you're always juggling and trying to balance, like, because you could crush the sales, piece, but if you can't process it and book it all, then you're not, really bringing revenue, and getting all that to really work in sync. It's I feel like the constant battle,
Yes.
when you're in business, and I think the people that win, and are able to scale and grow are the ones that are better at balancing all that stuff out
Right.
constantly.
I agree. And as the leader, that's your responsibility. If it's your business and it's your
Yes.
vision, you're the glue that brings all that together. And then you can instill corporate culture, company values, because your company always has a culture, whether you are proud of it or aware of it. Especially when you're small, few employees or a few even contractors. Like most of the stuff I do is contract work. So I work with an engineer, I work with an architect but there's still a culture with, when they hear from me or hear from one of my business partners, they like to pick up the phone call or they don't. And you want to be the kind of company that when either your boss or your client calls you, that they want to talk to you, and we wash over this idea of providing value, and it's said so much in the public media that the actual meaning behind those words is lost. But when people get off the phone with you or get through using your service, they want to have felt better afterwards, or have had some sort of true value creation experience where, like, oh, that was just so rewarding. Like, we talk about these big companies, but do you remember when Google first came out and it was just so amazing to use the internet in a way it wasn't before, when you're just using Yahoo? I mean,
Yeah.
they revolutionized,
It
and
was so simple.
oh, it just worked. Like before, you could never find anything, and then suddenly they made finding resources on the internet so easy, and so they were able to build a juggernaut behind just that very simple concept. And that's fundamentally what all businesses are doing, is they're finding some very valuable but simple concept, and they're doing it at scale, and they're doing it such that the cost it takes you to use it is way less than the value you receive.
100%. And value is something that you experience. It's not something that you just say.
Right.
You could say,
Oh,
"Oh, I love to bring value to my customers," but if your customers don't experience that, then they're going to, the next guy down the block. And
yep.
I was just sharing this with my team. Businesses are, most businesses today, just how quickly the world has grown, and there's so many different businesses out there.
Mm-hmm.
Most businesses are really a commodity at this point. I mean, and in so many industries, because you have so many options to do business, and so many places to go. So if you're not bringing the value back to the customer, then like what are you really doing? Because if you're dropping the ball, they're just going to go to somewhere else that, to get whatever it is that they need, and people have options today.
Something that we all experience is we go to some sort of a restaurant, and most of the time I find that the service that you get at most restaurants in the US, unless you're at some sort of high cuisine place, the experience is really not that good. And I would probably say that the experience there is probably better than I've seen in other countries. But still, overall, when you go to the average, $10-$20 a plate type place for your food, whether it's fast casual, fast food, or you're sit down and dining, the experience overall is not that pleasant. And when you finally get good service, and you're not even paying that much more for it, but when you get really good service, it's just like, wow, that is incredible. I have kids, and so we go through Chick-fil-A a lot. And honestly, Chick-fil-A's food is not that great, but they're consistent and they're fast and they're reliable. And 9 times out of 10, it is a far superior experience than I get from any other fast food restaurant.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's really all the little things. It's not really all that complicated, but it comes from the top down,
It does.
And you got to really, work hard to create, that culture. It definitely makes a difference. So what are you excited about? What's up next for you? What are you working on?
It's funny that you asked that question. What's up next? I used to co-host a podcast that's called "What's Up Next."
Oh, that's so funny.
It was a personal finance podcast where we would talk to people, and it was like that was the question we would ask everybody at the end. Is like, okay, what's up next? Like, what's happening in the world that you're interested about? It actually it was a good podcast. It just podcasts are a lot of work, so my other co-host took it and ran with it, and he has done really well with that. It's now called Earn and Invest, but the spirit behind it is we were having different conversations, and we're trying to find the next interesting thing to talk about in the world of personal finance. But for me, what is up next is I am on the capital raise movement. I am actively looking for people that have capital that is nervous about the volatility in the marketplace right now, and they're looking for a safe haven with a decent yield. And so that's the message that I'm putting out there, is that I have a fund that has a model that is promising, I would say, good returns, but they're not promising like 20, 30, 40% returns. And there are potentially people who would get that some years, but any kind of model that gets that kind of return probably isn't getting that every single year. I'm offering a consistent return to where people can double their money in the 6 or 7 year time frame. And that's the kind of my pitch is that you get this money that you've gone and earned, and you put it into investments that are going to create yield over time without you having to fuss with it.
That's exciting stuff. That's awesome. Well, I definitely want to hear, more about that. And if you want to hear more about that, definitely hit up Paul. And, we always like to end with just like, what's a growth tip that you would have offered to yourself in the beginning, or you'd really offer other fellow entrepreneurs that are watching the show?
Read everything. You are your most valuable resource. And whether it's through podcasts or YouTube, or you're listening to books or you're reading physical books, take in a variety of information, and some Venn diagram, some overlap of the information that you're bringing in and kind of distilling into lessons you can apply to your life, and it provides you these amazing insights. So it's just like this like volume in, volume out philosophy. And most people don't read. And if you just read a book a month, you're reading more than most of your competition. And the people that you find that are blowing your socks off, and they're just like they're these incredible business owners. You're like, how are they doing it? Leaders are readers, and they are consuming a ton of content. So become infatuated with the idea of learning and gathering new information.
Great stuff. Awesome advice. Definitely appreciate it. And how can people find you, Paul?
The best way to find me is at my personal website, pauldavidthompson.com. It's how you'd expect all those names are spelled. I have the curse of 3 common names, so I had to stash them all together to get a unique domain. So I try to be that guy, Paul David Thompson, everywhere. And it's weird. You go on the internet and you find like there's a lot of us. Like even in my own town, there's like a whole bunch of people named Paul David Thompson. It's so creepy when you think about it.
That really is. Well, there's not many Joe Cambaratos out there.
I bet
not. That's awesome. Well, good stuff, man. It was really great to have you on. Definitely check out, Paul David Thompson if you're interested in learning more, maybe investing in some of his deals. Thanks for being on the show. Paul, appreciate everything, and it's really awesome to see you, making moves and grow and scale your business. Thanks again, and keep growing.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Take care.